life? What is the reason for my existence? Is there something that is going to happen to me after I die? And rather like my analogy, of course, the consequences of believing or not believing are extremely severe. They are indeed very serious. And we believe that God has given these messengers and these prophets signs, indications through which and by which a rational thinking person could come to feel certain that the claim of those prophets is a true claim. Amongst the things that prophets have been given are books. Those books contain words, guidance, revelation from God, from the Creator, to explain to us these things. And that is, of course, the claim that the Muslim makes, that Muhammad, may God's peace and blessings be upon him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is the last messenger, and the Quran is the final revelation from the Creator. It has come with some signs, some evidences, some things through which a rational person could examine, could look, could study, and reach certainty that this claim is true. When I say certainty, of course, I don't mean an absolute certainty. You can't reach absolute certainty merely by rationally examining these things. I don't believe, anyway, reason can lead generally to absolute certainty. Okay? And so really, the rest of my lecture today is really to try and explain to you why God tells us, or what God tells us, why the world is the way it is. Why did God make the world in this way? Why is there suffering? Why are there difficulties? Why is there hardship? What is the explanation that the Quran gives and that the Prophet Muhammad gave for all of these things? First of all, I want to put everything into perspective. The first perspective I would like to put everything into is that I'm sure most of us would agree that it is really an exaggeration to describe life as suffering. In fact, I was a Buddhist for a couple of years, and one of the reasons I really felt unconvinced by Buddhism is that the premise of Buddha's philosophy was that life is suffering. And that's a faulty premise. And if your premise is faulty, then what follows on from that is almost definitely going to be faulty. Life is not suffering. In fact, I'm sure most of us would agree that the joy and the happiness that we experience in life is usually much more than the suffering that we experience. And it usually happens, quite fortuitously, that suffering, we have the saying, when it rains it pours. Suffering tends to come in bunches, and that's actually good. Psychologically, it's good. And good things tend to happen to us most of the time. I don't say this is the case with every single person, but to simply portray life as suffering is ridiculous. In fact, most of the time human beings experience an extremely positive relationship with their life. In fact, the Quran is full of warnings to human beings not to get carried away with the life of this world, not to be deceived by its pleasures and its joys. Indeed, most human beings are so immersed in the pleasures of life, when someone comes to tell them, hey, you need to know what's behind the door, they say, man, I'm just too busy having a good time to know or even care what's behind the door. In fact, statistically, by the way, most people don't care. They just don't care. In this country. I don't mean on the whole planet. In this country. We know it because we've done a survey. Most people don't, about 70% of people in this country, we did a statistically sound survey. 70% of these people in this country don't want to know about any religion. Not Islam, not Christianity, any religion. They just don't want to know. They don't care. Because I presume they're just pretty busy enjoying their life. It's just fine the way it is. Why would I even need to think about anything else? So that's the first perspective I'd like to put. You know, this portraying life as if it's full of suffering and there's no joy, there's no happiness, right? As if life is full of neglect and starvation and disease, whereas in fact, in reality, most people don't really experience that at all. The second perspective I would like to paint is, well, let's be real. Like they have that phrase, let's get real about ourselves as human beings. And what I find is a lot of people who talk about this and complain about this, whether it's on the BBC or whoever, it is such a skewed and almost arrogant perspective. I mean, from the angle from which they feel justified to question God. So let's put the human being in perspective. Human beings are small, little creatures. You just need to fly up in an aeroplane and look down and you can't even see us. We're small, little creatures. And if you are able to travel outside of this Earth's atmosphere, soon our Earth would recede and become an almost insignificant dot. Indeed, if you kept on going a bit further, our whole solar system, including our sun, actually ends up being a small dot on the outer arm of the spiral, of the outer arm of our galaxy, which is called the Milky Way. The Milky Way is estimated to be 10,000 light years across. That means if you traveled non-stop for 10,000 years at the speed of light, that is how long it would take you to cross our galaxy. And our galaxy is one of millions of galaxies in the known universe. And that's what we know. Now I'll open the door a little bit. The Prophet Muhammad, may God's peace and blessings be upon him, he said in an authentic narration, he said, the universe compared to the kursi, which you could translate as the chair or the pedestal, or it is the greatest, next greatest created thing after the universe. I don't think we think of it in a literal sense, but the kursi. The universe compared to the kursi is like, imagine this, a ring thrown in the desert. A ring thrown in the desert. That's our universe compared to the kursi. And the kursi compared to the arsh, which means the throne, is also like a ring thrown in the desert. What is incredible is that the one who is above the arsh should care about us at all. That is incredible. I mean, if we were to anthropomorphize God, you know, you walk along the floor, you don't care what insect you crush, what ant you crush, right? What animal you destroy. You drive in your car, you don't really care how many bugs splatter on your windscreen. I mean, what are we? What are we? We're just dots on a dot, in a galaxy that's a dot, in the universe that's a dot, before the kursi, which is a dot before the arsh. That's the perspective, right? However, of course, there is this, what I would say is an almost arrogant assertion that you find some religions make, that we are sons and daughters of God. whatever that is supposed to mean. I mean, if I came today, yeah, and in my glass here I had little fish, yeah, I said, this is Jonah, my son. Yeah, you'd say, but Mr. Green, that's a fish. No, that's my son. Yeah, he has a place on the table. You know, he eats dinner with us. Right? He has his own room in the house. And under our new laws, the adoption papers are coming through next week. He's my son, but you say he's a fish. You may love him like a son, right? But this is a fish and you are a human being. You can't take something that is not like you to be your son. It doesn't actually in language have meaning. It doesn't have a meaning. So this assertion that we are sons and daughters of God, well, the Quran tells us that God is glorious above such things. And God is glorious above such a thing, if God had wanted or wished to take for himself as a son, he would have taken something more like himself. But this is the mentality we have. So from that mentality comes a sort of assertion like, who is God to treat us like this? It's ridiculous to think like that. In fact, who are you even to question God? He can do what he likes, with who he likes. And who are we? What are we? Nothing. Totally powerless before the power of God. We are his, and this is the first, therefore, assertion that we need to make. We are his creatures, slaves, servants. That is all we are. We are the creatures of God, the creation of God. Limited, finite, temporary, mortal, needy. That is what defines us as human beings. That is the reality of our condition. So that's the perspective I would like to put on this whole question. Point number 2. Therefore, what is the purpose of our life? Why do we exist? For what are we human beings supposed to do with our life? This is an interesting question. Indeed, if I was asked, most people, I often do. I said, what's your shoes? Yeah. It's okay, you can stick them out there and relax and chill out, brother. Your shoes, what are they for? Walking. And those bits of string on your shoes, bro, what are they for? Huh? Keep them on your feet, right? Okay. And what's that on your face, those? Huh? Help you see and make you look very intelligent, and you do indeed. To help you see, yeah? And, brother, what's that you got on your head? Oh, you know, what's that thing? Yeah. No, yeah, that's fine, yeah. What's that for? Huh? Huh? You don't know? It helps, okay. And what's this for here? Huh? It's a pen, right? You're right with it. Okay, I'd like you to think really about yourself. Think about your body. Your eyes, your nose, your tongue, your mouth, your ears, your liver, your kidneys, your lungs. Every single component part of your body has a purpose. In fact, if we begin to look in the whole universe, it gets even more extraordinary. You know there's a moth? There is a moth, right? This moth lives in the Amazon jungle, right? And the sole purpose of this moth is to eat the poo of another moth. That's what it does. There's a big moth, and underneath it lives a little moth, and this little moth eats the poo of that big moth, right? I didn't see this myself. This is something someone told me, all right? Now, if this little moth was not there, then what would happen is this poo would trickle down the tree, and the ants would come up, and they would eat this big moth. I mean, the point being is that how there is a place for everyone.